And good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Literally, this is as welcome to the very first Rebel DMs round table. I think this was kind of designed as a way of some of us kind of what we said was a small streamer alliance. We thought Rebel DM sounded cooler, so we kind of took that name instead. And we're essentially a bunch of streamers and a bunch of DMs who love what each other do, and I think we kind of support and try to support each other as much as we possibly can. I think there's faces on here that you have all seen over this week, some that you may see that way with Fizzlekins, who hopefully see a little bit more of, because we saw you last night, of course, with City of Sin, and of course Josh. Oh, I'm doing the right sides. This is brilliant. Josh over here also was playing on it, but also did the Frost Maiden DM last night as well. So I think I'd like to.
Fast. We'll take that toy away.
So I think I'd like to just go around everybody and sort of get them to introduce themselves and sort of I think one of the questions is, as you do it, I think kind of what got you into not D&D and role playing, but got you into running the table. I think that's probably a good way. Should we start with? Let's start with Philly, actually, DMFilly.
With me, hello, I'm Philly. I'm DMFilly out here on the mean internet streets. My name's Rich Filiberto. I'm from New York. It's a beautiful place to be. It's a beautiful day. I'm so glad to be back hanging out with you guys, meeting new friends. Talking about D&D is one of my favorite things in the world. So what got me into running the table is what got me into D&D fundamentally. I'm like an 11-year-old kid. It's 1991. I'm in Colonial Williamsburg with my mom on vacation. We go into the Colonial bookstore in the reenactment town, and here on the shelves are the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master Guide. And so I hassle mom into buying me these books because my best friend's older brother used to tell me these stories, and I brought them home and bullied all of my friends into playing D&D with me every week. And so I had to run the table, man, it was me or we didn't play. And thus begins a 32-year career as the forever DM. If I want to play, then I open the books and I fire it up, and I'm very fortunate and blessed. Sorry, there's motorcycles out there, but the closest friends in my life, the closest people that I have in my life are people that I've spent countless hours with around a D&D table. It's the fastest way for me to make friends with new human beings at the age I am here. And that's the gist of how I got here to this awesome panel.
Nice.
I have to correct you, DMFilly, only because now you have 4 great DM friends who would love to see you at our tables, and so you are no longer the forever DM. None of us are.
Yeah.
Nope. True story. There's a paradigm shift. I'm still trying to align myself to the new reality, but yeah, I appreciate it.
Leave alignment at the door, Rich. Don't worry about it.
We will make a player out of you.
And I'm actually going to add another question onto here as well, which is, what are you running at the moment? I think that's the other one to kind of add.
Oh, so what am I running at the moment? You can catch me over at Twitch TV/DMFilly. I have 3 weekly games that I run. I run a game called Firelight Tales. The adventure we're currently doing is called The Titans Heirs. I'm going to be publishing it this summer on the DMs Guild. That's a classic kind of. It's inspired by JRPGs of the 90s and the old 2nd edition campaigns we used to run. It's kind of overland travel, resource management. There are a bunch of young kids from an isolated mountain community who were driven from their homes and now lost kind of in the mountains, looking to fulfill their destiny. Tuesday nights, I run a game called Dragonfly. It's D&D in space. Yes. And so it's an adaptation of Spelljammer and Planescape. And I have a dope crew of 8 folks, all of whom are pretty much professional podcasters, broadcasters, that we're doing a mini West Marches. Every week, some iteration of those 8 folks show up. They're the crew of a classic Spelljammer ship called a Dragonfly. It was low-hanging fruit. We had to kind of take it, And so that's an awesome game. And then on Sunday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern, you can catch me running Kings of Neon. It is not D&D. a game called City of Mist, which I ran with you, Joe,
So
and a
good.
couple of our like beautiful players on Monday. And it's a really dope game. Apocalypse Engine spinoff. I love it. And then I do a bunch of podcasting with my friends at the Post Show Recaps Network. You can check them out. They're really great folks. And I do a podcast called Dungeons and Dragons in Discord, where the kind of leader of the community, Josh Wigler, plays a character. He asked me, can I play a robot barbarian from the future who comes back to take care of a bunch of kindergartners? And I was like, yes, Josh, you can do that. Dungeons and Dragons facilitates that. So Josh is playing a Warforged barbarian who has been sent from the future to save the past. And you can guess his name because it's Arnold. So those are like the main like forward-facing projects that I'm working on nowadays. But yeah, thanks for that.
Nice. Well, thank you again. It's so good to have you here with us. And again, your face, the voice that is DMFilly. Okay, I'm gonna pop over and say and speak to. Actually, you're gonna speak to Fizzlekins, because I think everyone on this chat knows you very, very well because you're always in the chat for us. But I'd love to
always bugging everybody. All right, so to keep it easy, I'm Fizzlekins, or confuse the other Josh here, also Josh. Don't
call me Schwa if that's easier.
No, I got Fizz all the time. It's fine. So no worries there. Let's see. I would say I started playing D&D 3.5 back in freshman year of high school. Had of course heard stories of the past, but I had a good friend that I knew from elementary school that I ran into again in high school, and he was starting the 3.5 game right after school in the like in the library area. I'm like, all right, I'm in on this. Elf Paladin, ran with it, and that's what started my career. What brought me over to DMing was, again, introducing D&D to my friends. Someone's got to run it. Thankfully, I'm not a forever DM. I'm actually a player in a lot of games, because while I had stories to tell, so did this Zach have stories to tell. My other friend Zach had stories to tell. One of our friends from back in the day, Archibald, he had stories to tell. So we all had turns as DMs and able to tell our stories and all that kind of stuff. Whereas a lot of these other folks had good scripts and everything. I've always been an improv DM. I've always like, hey, you're in the world. What are you doing? And here's the consequences. And then here's a lead. Let's bring you over here. Let's see if you can figure out what's going on. So I've always enjoyed that style. It's worked well for me. And D&D, all editions. Yes, I've touched fourth that no one wants to talk about. Gone back and played second edition, so I haven't gone back further than second, but still had that. Picked. Yeah, right. Picked up other systems. Shadowrun, love it. Oh, love it. Anna Beyond Fantasy, Call of Cthulhu, Traveler. Love Traveler. That's another good system. Let's see, what else have I played? Savage Worlds, which we're doing right now, but I've also done other Savage Worlds games. Oh man, I have to go through. Oh, Besum, which you ran for the crew on Tuesday, I think, was it? Yeah, learned that one from convention, Anime Week in Atlanta. There's a guy that ran literally the same style game that Zach ran, and that's where we picked up that idea from. And I've run that multiple times at cons. So
nice.
Fun. What games are you running right now, Josh?
What am I doing?
But yeah. Here's all these systems that are great. Oh, right. But yeah, the only thing I'm running right now, I'm just running a Shadowrun game, because we finished. I was running a D&D 5e Draconic Crusade game that actually came to a close. And it ended great. It was fantastic. The players got to level 16 through when they started. So it was a slog, loaded with magic items. Like I said, they were in a crusade. So that was great. But that wrapped up back in December. So we started Shadowrun, and now I got using the sci-fi terms, we have a Razor Girl. And then We have a mage, a street doc, and a rigger, all
Nice.
together. Yep, all together, getting dragged into random shenanigans. I started them off in the world, doing my whole improv style, getting them caught up in gangs, and they're on the cusp of having to deal with some mafia. They're in the city of Denver. I got a nice map of interactive map of Denver for that.
Awesome. I love it. I played a vampire game in Denver for a long time because it's a good city to role play in. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. No, you should check out Denver for Shadowrun. It's just as bad as Seattle because it's a treaty city. It's split, and that's what makes it the fun. And I didn't want to do Seattle, so and now they're getting dragged into a campaign book. Like I said, I started them off, with getting their feet wet and doing whatever they wanted, and now I'm pulling in a campaign book to get them slogged in with the shit, to say the least.
Nice. So busy.
I'll probably start streaming that after all this. I think I'm probably gonna start streaming it too. That's on Monday night.
Yes!
Hell yeah, dude.
7 p.m. Eastern to 9:30.
One of us.
Oh, yeah, right? I mean, I've done some streaming in the past. I haven't done D&D streaming, so I'll
Get on the bus. Do it,
That's
man. Hell yeah.
It has enough exposure. So
Yes, absolutely. Well, I tell you, I will definitely. I might even sign my name on that one, for sure. I'm going to move over to other Josh, or Josh Ellison, DM Josh Ellison, and sort of to see if you could introduce yourself for us, please.
Yeah. So for anyone who was watching yesterday, I was the druid in Seven Deadly Kobolds, and also GM'd for the Frost Maiden session last night. This is my second day being on a stream involved with D&D, I think. First time playing was yesterday. First time DMing was yesterday. I've got to say I've got a taste for it, so I'll probably be joining the clan to some extent with that.
Yes, mate.
Yes, we are Legion.
Shun the non-believer, shun them.
You're a rebel, Josh.
finger guns that one.
Yep.
But yeah, so how I got started playing D&D, I think, if I remember correctly, I think it started when Stranger Things came out for me. Like, that was when I first got exposed to the idea and saw it being played, and was like, that looks fucking cool.
Hell yeah.
I assume the same rules on swearing still apply. I hope they do. Too late now. I was like, that looks friggin' cool, Consonant, and I want it in. So then I got chatting to a guy at work, and he mentioned that he was really into it, a guy that me and Joe have both played with, and who I'll probably mention again later.
Yeah,
we end up talking about our favourite player movements. And because I had no one to DM for me, I showed up to a random session at a games club. I played one session of Pathfinder. I headbutted the control board of an airship as a dwarven barbarian that someone gave me on a pre-rolled sheet. And that was that. And then after that, I picked up a copy of Lost Mine of Phandelver for 5th edition. I ran that for a couple of people at work. Then I met Joe at a random artist's night that he was running about 6 months later. About a month after that, he asked me to move in. And me and him have been playing and DMing for and with each other ever since.
Ooh, pretty much.
In terms
That
of
is amazing.
Yeah. That's the whole history. And then in terms of what I'm running at the moment, obviously Frost Maiden, and then sporadically alongside that, just from sheer popular demand, basically, is as a one shot, because a couple of our Frost Maiden players couldn't show up a few weeks ago. I decided to run like a 70s space themed adventure. Like,
yes.
Yeah,
Proper
yeah.
psychedelic
Hell yeah.
sci-fi.
All of it.
So good.
yeah, like Pink Floyd, David Bowie, like
Dude,
there's music.
I'm falling in love.
Yeah,
Flash Gordon up in there.
Feels like
Flash.
It feels like Flash Gordon. It really does.
Yeah.
that aesthetic we're aiming for. And so yeah, I've run a couple of those now where it's sort of we're going to hit the second part of the cosmic space disco on the edge of a black hole in a few weeks' time. But that's kind of what I'm running at the moment. Might be bringing a bit more of Frost Maiden into the stream. Patent pending, TBA. So So yeah, that's me.
Do it. We enjoyed it.
Wicked. Thank you, Josh. Thank you. And then I'm going to introduce over to Zach. Zach's Big Wave. I'd like to introduce.
Hey, my name's Zach Aronson. I'm gracing this stream with my very last sandalwood incense. So I'm not just waving this back and forth. I'm blessing this stream. I approve this. Cosign. I am. If you haven't seen me, I'm over on twitch.tv/ZachsBigWave. I have picked up DMing online. It's been like 10. No, not 10. That's too long. It's been about 6 months. I've been DMing for about 13 years prior to that. This kid over here was kind of one of the ones, that Josh, with the beard braids, was one of the ones who got me into D&D in my junior year of high school. And I had always been a super nerd, but I had never known anybody that played D&D. It was always just like something I heard talked about. There was one of my older friends that was like, maybe when you're older, we'll let you play D&D. It's a little too complicated right now. And he would play this game with his cousins and stuff. But it was always something that it sounded great, but I just never had anybody to play with. And so then I got the opportunity to play in a game. And then after we, I think my first character was a rogue. We played it for about 3 sessions, and then that died. And then we started playing Heroes, which is like a D10 system.
Yeah, about hero system. Yep.
Yeah, the hero system, which was interesting. I made this crazy martial artist. That went only 2 sessions. And then I was like, I want to DM. I want to tell the story. I want to be God and decide what, who lives and dies. This sounds great. And so I'd always been a really avid creative writer, but I picked up a little magazine from one of our local stores that had like a one-shot module in it for level 1 players. And I was like, I started reading through it, and I'm like, this is a cool concept, but I want to add a scene here that makes sense. And I want to add a scene here that makes sense. And why wouldn't they do this? And so I ripped apart this module, and I attached it to a much larger arcing narrative, and was like, why does it wait, it ends here? They just get rewards and then fuck off? This is what? No. And so I wrote this huge overarching campaign that went for a while, then kind of died off as we all went to college. And then in college, and as I was actually coming out of college, we played this long dragon campaign that I ran for a while that only really broke up because we had several of our people move away.
Rip.
And so it was just one of those things where I would love to go back and rerun that campaign. Because I spent a really long time writing it, and they started off by getting this massive horde of dragon gold, and then they built a keep that was their home base of operations, and then they became they became gladiator slaves for a while. It was insane. It was so much fun.
I would love to put a pin in that, and at some point while we're all here, just talk about that long campaign, what our longest experiences are. But I don't mean to derail everything. It's just a thought.
We will.
Yeah,
we will.
Yeah,
okay.
Don't worry.
Sure.
The character from that game will be featured in our chats.
Yes. Yes.
So what are you running now, Zach?
So right now we actually just finished our first season, so I'm a little new to that. Was all back in 3.5, and I had never DM'd anything other than 3.5 until recently. I jumped into 5th edition because I had heard mixed things, and I fell in love with it. It's so nice and it flows so well. And now we finished our first season. We had a couple of players leave our main game, and so we have some people that left, and we have some people that stepped away for a couple of months. So I had this idea tumbling around in the back of my mind after we finished season 1 of Stone Shaper, which was kind of like D&D set in a modern suburban town with a school aspect and little high schoolers going on adventures. Now we've cut completely to a whole different universe where we're doing City of Sin, which is D&D races and characters and magic, but set in 1920s Prohibition era Chicago. And
Amazing.
we've switched systems to the Savage Worlds Deadlands system, because other than the Wild West like gunfights, which don't, yeah, there you go, you get the new Deadlands book. Other than the gunfights, which don't happen obviously on the streets of Chicago, everything in Deadlands, if you just skip forward by about 40 years, lays on top of Chicago in the 1920s perfectly, and the system handles gunfights so well. So we've jumped into that. We've done 2 episodes. We've got our 3rd episode coming, not this Saturday, but the following Saturday, and everything about it has just been mad, and I love it.
Awesome.
Nice. Well, I think that might kind of like push us through to like talk about, like start talking into subjects. So I think it's beautiful to have these wonderful wealth of experience and knowledge kind of around with us. I mean, as Sabotage the DM, I'm always interested in those bastard players. And so I think my first question is, like, let's talk. I would love to talk about like a moment in which a player has completely and totally 100% changed not only your own plans, but also the plans of everybody else on the table.
Oh yeah.
I wonder if we could just kind of talk about anyone's kind of favorite moment of that happening, or something that's happened in that way.
I'll quickly jump back to that player that I mentioned before, Joe Dent. It's a little different of an answer than what you asked for, because this was actually a one-shot run for a single player. But the one move that he made, the reason I bring it up is because it didn't just radically change the direction of the one shot. It radically changed how I view like NPCs generally in the system, in the game. And it was basically, he was playing a mystic, so that was my first mistake, was allowing that shit through the net.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. That'll happen.
Yeah.
There's a reason it's not published, folks.
That's a learning curve. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And bear in mind, this was maybe my 3rd session I'd ever GM.
Oh no, I mean I did it on my 300th. No shame, man. You're all good. You can still do it now.
Yeah.
You get
sometimes you're like,
homebrew
hey,
vision.
well, yeah. I mean, sometimes you get experience with the game. You're like, hey, yeah, here's what's broken. Let's see what you do with it. I want to know, and then you go,
Yes.
I regret everything.
Yeah,
But
especially with one player, like let them. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like I've gone through a period since where I would never allow it, and now I've kind of come full circle where like I'd allow it out of curiosity.
No, you allow everything.
But
you allow everything at your table. It's so good.
except for the peace cleric.
Yeah.
Except for that.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. But yeah, so basically, to his credit, he didn't play like a total munchkin. He wasn't particularly min-maxing, even though he could with this class. But essentially, he was rocking his way down the Tribal Trail on the Sword Coast, Forgotten Realms, and he runs into a band of orcs who are basically up to no good, and they try to mug him. And he crits on a performance check, and essentially persuades them to see the error of their ways in ever following violence as a way of life. And so then the response to that was the lead orc broke down in tears and confessed that he'd only ever wanted to be an actor, but they had no use for that in the Many Arrows tribe. And then one by one, all of the band basically confessed to being closet artists, but they had to be warriors because they were expected to be because of their clan's traditions. And then they ended up becoming sort of like the painter decorator group and like Amdram theatre of Fandalen on the Tribal Trail, all out of one critted performance check.
That's magnificent. I love those beats, you know what I mean? Where they just like completely subvert your whole perception of a character, and you like discover something in the moment on the fly that that's beautiful, dude. I love it.
Yeah. It's just like I love the title Sabotage the DM because the sabotages are often the source of the greatest gold, aren't they? Like the stuff you never count on. But yeah, that's my story for that.
I love the notion of like these orcs that are would-be performers, like acting like warriors. You know what I mean? It's just
it gets really meta if you think about it too much.
So good.
Oh,
I
love it so much, and it's like that in and of itself is like wanting to honor a crit that was so unexpected, right? Is like something as a DM that is so ingrained. And when you see someone do it or not do it, it just feels like such a missed opportunity of creativity, right? Like, actually, I'm gonna pull from my story. I think I'm gonna pull what happened last night in City of Sin, where my wife goes across the street to one of her other characters that she's going to be playing later in the campaign. She knows that trouble's coming, and she goes, "Can I?" And she knows that this woman, she's a Catholic nun, and she goes to the voodoo priest and goes, "I know that we don't see eye to eye, but can you help?" And she hands her 5 pickled cherries and just goes, "They'll give them a bang." And she throws the first one and it explodes all over the guy's face. And then she throws the second one, and I've been rolling on a hidden table because I decided that each one of these cherries is going to do something different. She crit with exploding dice in Savage Worlds, which, if you're not familiar, every time you get a crit in Savage Worlds, whether you roll a d4, a d6, a 10, or a 12, if you get max, it's called exploding, and you get to roll again. And for every 4 points above 4, it's considered a raise. And so more and more and more ridiculous things happen. And she exploded 4 times on this damage roll, throwing her second cherry. And so I said, "What's in your head right now? What's in your character's head?" And she said, "Not a single thought," because her character is super airheaded. And I just was like, I'm looking at the powers table, and I'm thinking about the fact that she just crit so hard that she one-shot one of my enemies, and I'm going, you throw this cherry, it hits him in the face and sucks him into a literal void. Mm-hmm. And the cherry opens its mouth and goes, slurps the guy up like through a straw. It goes, yummy, and then just disappeared. Because she quadruple crit, and like you have to honor that with something equally as amazing. It's an insta kill, and you have to make it a spectacle. And if you don't, I feel like it's such a missed opportunity.
Yeah. So here's my favorite. This was going to be one of the stories first of the DMA to begin with, and also this is your triple crit moment. So this is an Anima Beyond Fantasy. It's a D100 system, and when you roll above a 90, you'll explode, and you get to roll again. And then if you roll above a 91, so on and so forth. So you can crit and get really high. We're sitting here. This is like the end of the campaign level. We're fighting. We come across this guy who's a final boss. And one of the characters, he's a stealth archer. He likes to hide behind stuff and then just shoot arrows. He has the ability to arc them and make them twist all over the place and hit their target. So he's like, I'm gonna hide. And the DM's like, we're in the middle of an open field. There's literally nowhere to hide. He's like, I'm gonna try it anyway. He's like, all right, that's a minus 200. Because that's the modifier for trying to hide in plain sight, is a minus 200. And he explodes 3 times, gets something like a 300 and 320 after the minus 200, which and this guy rolls his nose to see him and fails, and the DM's like, "You're hidden. Okay, go ahead and roll your sneak attack."
I guess you got
it. Rolls his sneak attack, shoots his arrow, crits the arrow, and one-shots the guy. The DM's like, "We're doing it."
Yeah, I think
and that's just a story of the dice. You got to run with it sometimes.
That's it. I mean,
sometimes
it is the dice.
The dice tell the story. Yeah,
and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's the player agency.
Yeah.
And I think I've had a moment actually with Dan Berman actually. So you got this Pirates homebrew that I've been working on. It's a very large campaign. It's 1 to 20, essentially fighting the Kraken cult. And it's like wings of cults that sort of spiral out from the center, and essentially they just killed a Medusa with mythic actions, which I don't know if you guys love to look at mythic actions at all. Essentially it's like, this is a 400 HP paralyzing creature that when it dies, its chest opens up and another form of it comes out and it goes back up to full HP again and has a different set of actions. So they just kill this thing.
This isn't even my final form.
There's like, we've taken away gold in the whole environment because it's all being turned to lead, being like moved towards the dragon turtle. So they find like 100 grand of real gold. And so instead of going back to sort of report to the queen of this area, they decide to ship it through a hole and send a sending stone to the ship to come and meet them round the side, and then just fuck off to the west. And it was like, I had this whole trajectory pathed out about how to bring in all of these hundreds of different factions together to sort of bring him into the next section. And I was literally just like, I don't know what to do here. I have to stop. And funny enough, I went through a real kind of bad phase of like, I don't know what to do. And I started reading the Lazy DM, and I started looking at.
Oh, it's so good.
So good.
Yeah.
And I started looking at spiral kind of theory and like spiral campaign planning, which now means that we're like planning what are they interested in from the last episode. And that's all that we do now. I don't think about anything else from there, apart from maybe these fronts that are kind of coming through. And so there's actions happening around them. But really, in our world, we're just dealing with what are they interested in last session.
Exactly how I do it. Improv that stuff, going, that's what they want to go. Continue running with it.
I've had the same type of experience so many times, right? Like I've been playing for 30 something years. And so like so many times you have the campaign lined up. You just bought this new module, this new adventure. You're like ready to roll. And they're like, fuck this, they like take the left instead of the right. And that's that. And it's all out the window. So I love like following them now. And in recent years in 5e, like most of my time has been spent with these West Marches campaigns where I have like a pretty big player group that are changing week to week, and I like follow them. I look to prep for the group that's going to be sitting at the table next week and follow their motivations. You want to go back to this location, you want to go explore here, but the one of the more recent things a couple of years ago, we had some players that like basically they got hired for a job to go to Limbo to try to retrieve some item that a wizard was looking for and had located on this other plane. And they were going to be like the extraction team, right? And they tangled with a couple of Githyanki when they get there, and they kill a Githyanki knight. And one of the players is like, yeah, I'm taking the silver sword. And this is a guy who's played for 30 years and like knows the drill. That like if you take the silver sword, the Githyanki will come for you. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but like you just set that hourglass over, right? That countdown clock has begun, right? So now it's a year later. They're having a Christmas party, a Yule party. They have all the NPCs from town in their like headquarters. They're hanging out. There's a band, and like the band or a bunch of Githyanki with illusions. The airship appears over the city. Githyanki paratroopers are dropping all over. Everything's on fire. They're fighting. A couple of NPCs get taken hostage, right? So they're like, oh, now we got to go to the astral plane, to the citadel of these bastards to retrieve our friends, right? So they get there and they're like scoping out the citadel. And there's this Githyanki like astral brig parked in front of the citadel. And they're like, yeah, so like we just steal the ship, right? And fucking blow this whole place up. And I'm just like,
just like a triple down.
Yeah, of course. Like, of course, that's what they're gonna do. If you put like the Githyanki astral brig in front of them, they're gonna try to steal it, right? And it just like didn't occur to me until the moment, which like it should have 1,000 times over, And meanwhile, they had all these other kind of resources and assets that they had pulled together. They stopped by like a Nyogi slaver camp, and they bought a bunch of Githzerai slaves and freed them. Like, come, we're gonna go fight your ancient blood enemy. Would you join us? This legion of like freed slaves with them. They storm the citadel. They're like kicking ass left and right. A couple of them are like pulling out of the parking dock on the ship, like, let's go, and they nuked everything. So now on my like West Marches game, which is in Cormier in the Forgotten Realms, they're like the most important military asset to the entire kingdom because they're a group of fucking 15th level adventurers with an astral brig, and a crew of Githzerai, like freed slaves who are like psionic and can port the thing into the astral plane. And like, you know, it changed the entire course of everything that happened after that. And it just was such a, like kind of pivotal moment for the whole course of the campaign. You know, there's so many like I could call, but that one's one of my favorite because it really changed the game that I thought I was going to be running, you know, a year and a half in. Like here, I think, oh yeah, we'll fight some Get Yankee tonight. You know, so it's great.
I had a similar one with, I did a one shot between me rewriting the whole module. It was like, I just went, oh, fuck it. An hour, give me an hour and I'll do a gladiator fight. It'd be fine. So we kind of created this gladiator fight in like a continent far southwest. And so it was like, cool, let's just gonna crack on with you guys, you know, die by the sword, live by the sword, you know, you've been living as a gladiator. And then what they did is that they waited until the last creature and essentially began to jeer up the crowd because they were their champions. Got the crowd to then riot. They then used the riot to get to the mayor, killed the mayor, and began a revolution known as the Red Sands.
Yes.
And it was what was great is at the time as well, the economy is dying in this place. So suddenly we had this whole unstable area in the module now. Now we know that is an unstable place. And then we brought a new character in. He was like, cool, I want to be from he just randomly said, I want to be from Alkawaba. So can we go from there? And we were like, okay. And so now he's bringing that news with him of this area. So now we've got another faction that is slowly going to eventually meet up with these pirates. And we'll have this kind of huge alliances from characters that they made from before. And it was like, this was supposed to be just an easy one shot. Let's just kill monsters in waves. And
yep.
The players have just taken that gift, ran with the chaos, and created something absolutely beautiful. You know, and I think that is the thing of chaos. We love the chaos. That's why we're DMs. Love the chaos.
Oh
right?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about the improvisation, right? That like adrenaline in the moment of like, oh shit, like all right, now what? You know, you start like,
what's wrong with this?
But you find these beautiful like inspirations, you know, even if it's as straightforward as like, this is a thing I do every day and I'm going to bring it in here, right? Like, oh, the orcs are actors, you know, but like some of the stuff, like it's inspiring, right? You find it in that moment with no planning and you're suddenly like following it to this conclusion that's like so much greater than what you could have sat there and like kind of sweated and grinded over for weeks in advance, right? Like the answers are, it's great.
Those yes and moments are just they're legendary. The one that I brought up obviously happened recently, but there's another one that came to mind as I was listening to you guys. And Josh, you were in the campaign. It was my long running dragon campaign that I ran, where at some point all of the NPCs were captured and basically put into a gladiatorial slave arena, where the king, who was dragonborn, had several terramancers that were literally crafting and building dungeons with like crystal cameras inside them and then broadcasting them to coliseums full of people. And
dwarf. Okay.
Yeah, this is the dwarf who fell in love and then left the astral plane with his infernal wife.
Ifrit's wife.
Or Ifrit wife, sorry. But yeah, so they built these elaborate things and would have them go through them. And at the end of the day, you would fuck off back to the slave pens, which had become their own actual town because adventurers gotta get stuff. And so we went through this whole thing of them finding out that like the whole arena was actually built and was piping the television, quote unquote, down to a dragon that lived in like the underside. And so it was actually his entertainment and he was a brass dragon. And so they get down there and he's just, you know, brass dragons are known for being like jokesters and stuff.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He was just, this is my entertainment. You know, I just sit down here and they keep me entertained and I don't go up there and fuck shit up. And this guy had literally no reason to go anywhere. And so I was like, okay, the party's going to have to go down. They're going to have to fight him. They're going to find the secret passage that's going to help them get out. because of course the dragon can leave whenever he wants. And instead, they convince him to help them overthrow the Empire.
Hell yeah.
And I'm looking at these like, I had them roll a couple of different persuasion checks, but it was like the rolls combined with the arguments they were making about why would you live down here?
Yeah,
and I'm just
all about the the argument before the roll, man. And then let the roll ate it.
It's just to like take a tangent for a second. Yeah, like back in the day, persuasion wasn't a skill in second edition, right? It was about the role playing. And so like I'm always coming from that place. You gotta let that inform what you're doing. Like nowadays, like it can affect the difficulty or the potential outcome or whatever. But yeah, those are great moments, Zach. That's rad, dude. Yeah.
He fucking they all jumped on the back of this brass dragon, shot up, blew up the entire Colosseum, razed the capital city of the Empire to the ground. The king is off in the distance holding two battle axes, watching them leave with this look of, I'm gonna fuck you up for this later.
Yep. Oh,
but
yeah.
like change the scope of not just the world, but the history of what I wrote was supposed to happen. And that's where like you were saying, the party wants to go where they want to go, but that campaign taught me that the bad guys aren't sitting around waiting for you to show up like Bowser at the end of a castle, right?
Yeah.
Mario. They're doing shit. And so, yes, this is what like the camera's focused on, and this is what the party's doing every week. But in the background, have yourself a loose timeline of, okay, you want to go off in this direction and fuck me and my campaign, that's fine. There's consequences. Later on in that exact same campaign, a giant eagle, like Lord of the Rings style, came and asked them for help because their nests were being attacked. And they were like, nope, we're going to go this way. And then 2 or 3 sessions later, a bunch of zombie eagles came down to attack them with a lich riding them. And they were like, what the hell? And I was like, you didn't save the eagles. You thought that they were just going to fuck off? Like,
I mean, Joe and I, the first time we spoke, we talked a bunch about Apocalypse World and like some of the indie games that are outside D&D. And like you said it, right? Fronts and like countdown clocks. These are things that I've like discovered in the indie RPG space, especially like the Apocalypse World games. I'm probably going to say that word a lot while we're here. But this idea of like, it's just a great, very simple mechanization of like that concept, Zach, right? Like the world is happening, man. Like every choice you make is a whole bunch of choices you didn't make, and like, there are consequences, and you have to be like thinking about that. And there's a great systems to like steal from these other games, right? You guys are talking about Savage Worlds and stuff that are great kind of like add-ons to plug into like contemporary 5th edition D&D to help sort of I don't want to say automate is like a little cold, but facilitate all that mechanically and like help you kind of track like the dials and the levers and like how you want the rest of the world to kind of respond and react to your hooligan adventures and all the nonsense that they're getting into. But yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Well, I will ask that question then of like, how do you guys keep track of your stuff? Like, what's I mean, we all have the greatest magic item in all of role playing, which is a pen and piece of paper. But like, what is your kind of way of tracking? Like, how do you kind of make sure that you keep hold of this information?
Google Drive.
Yeah, Google
so many documents on Google Drive. Every single one of my campaigns has its own folder, and I have over the years digitized a lot of my pen and paper stuff because my handwriting is awful. If you called it chicken scratch, chickens would be offended. And so I've slowly but surely converted some of my best content over to just the internet because I can access it from anywhere, and that's how I do it. You write out an outline, bullet points in Google. Google
bullet
Drive.
points are clutch. I'm like weirdly anachronistic in that like I still have this like voluminous shelf of books with all the like notebooks and the spiral notebooks, the composite notebooks of like all the stuff up until like the early 2000s. And from there, I like love a Google Drive, but at the same time, I'm like compulsive that I need it on my hard drive. So it's just like files, man, spreadsheets and Word documents and like piles. And now, honestly, in the last like 3 years, most of my 5th edition stuff, I keep it compartmentalized to the Roll20. Not to like plug anybody or whatever, but I think like we all use it to one extent or another, right? Like, I don't know. I like build my campaigns out in the Roll20, right? Like if the players go to this region and encounter these monsters, they stay in that folder and it becomes a bestiary, right? There all of a sudden we have these compartmentalized things, the huge roster of NPCs. Where are they? Who are they? And then like handouts kind of stacked in there. But yeah, most recently I'm running this like sprawling West Marches style of game that like the Google Docs are king. I need the Google Docs, so I feel you, man. Yeah, this is the way, right?
Oh no, and that's to say, just as a caveat, not to shit on anybody who uses pen and paper notebooks, not to shit on anybody who uses the files.
No.
Like you organize the way you organize, but like at some point when you need to look at it, you need to have it there. Whatever helps you at the table get to it as quick as can be. That's what's going to benefit your players at the end of the day. So like this, what we're saying is not the be all end all.
I mean,
you're going to develop your own style.
I mean, I've been using a lot of system. I think I spoke to both of you, both Illy and Zach, about this. I've been using Bear a lot, which is a really great system to be able to essentially you tag titles, you tag items, you tag characters, and essentially you create these long lists of that you can double tag things. So if I wanted to go, okay, what happened in episode 1? I've got everything. It will show me a contents page of every single character that's been in there, the locations in there, and everything else. My Roll20, however, is a chaotic mess of absolute disorganization. My Pirates campaign, every time I log on, I go, oh shit, I need to organize all those monsters. Like, but that one bear is my absolute everything. And I think my other great organization tool is my players. Because they're so much better remembering shit than I am.
Oh yeah, I mean, I like keep talking about these West Marches games, right? But I'm running one now that I've like mentioned a few times to you guys offline. But I mean, there's 70 players at this point. We have like 70 players, 10 DMs, and so part of the fundamental thing of the West Marches is like you don't earn XP until you write up the session for the people who weren't there, so they know what happened, right? So we have like these two systems. It's all in a Discord contained, and there's like a character lore channel and then a chronicler lore channel, and the chronicler lore is simple bullet points. Where did we go? What did we see? What loose ends are like hanging? How did everything resolve? And that's like straight, simple. Anybody can kind of look at that and extract like the basics, right? But then everybody in the player lore, they write out these first person perspectives of their character's experience in that adventure. And so I got to say, it's been like unreal because some of these folks, most of us don't get to work in a creative space day to day, right? Like a lot of people are trapped grinding out their 9-to-5s or whatever it is. And like, to tap into that part of them, like the writing is like incredible, right? We end up with these like short stories and novellas, and like some of these folks are coming in with like, you know, there's a 2,000 word limit, I think, to a Discord post, and they're putting in like 10 post recountings of like 1 3-hour session. It's wild. It's wild.
I'm stealing that.
So it's fun for
I'm
on that note.
Stealing that.
On that note, I have to shout out a player thing that I totally forgot about. My wife played a satyr in that exact same campaign that
she was too innocent.
She was so dumb and so innocent that she managed to have our necromancer convinced her that instead of slashing people, that we were making ketchup come out of them. Instead of killing people, we were putting them to sleep. And so their Coliseum name as gladiators became the Nap Time Crew.
Nice. Yes.
And she had such a warped sense of reality. Like my wife as the character, like as the player, knew that she was insane and had a completely warped sense of the world. And she decided to take it upon herself to do a journal every single session that she would read at the beginning of the next session of what her perspective of it was. Holy shit.
We loved it. Oh.
That was her first time sitting at a Dungeons and Dragons table. And I will talk about that till the cows come home, because my wife is 1,000 times better as a player maybe than I'll ever be. She's so fucking radical with those ideas.
Nice. I've also been kind of falling into the spreadsheet love recently as well. I think I've just shared something with Josh, which has vastly changed our play. I mean, yeah, I like numbers. Yeah, cool. but I'm not a number cruncher when I plan kind of things. So I kind of put together a probability table to try and help me figure shit out.
This thing's fucking fantastic, by the way.
It
Like,
really has
last
worked.
night's Frostmaiden session was built using that table, largely.
And it has really, really helped me understand, like, what is the sweet spot of probability to kind of hit a number and what makes balance, because CRs don't mean shit. And, like, players' ingenuity adds, like, 20 CR to everything.
Context is everything. Yeah, you change like the placement on the map at the start of an encounter by 30 feet and like everything like flips the script immediately, right? Like it's all about the context of the encounter, you know. It's hard to abstract that stuff.
So it's sort of like
Yeah,
that's what's something that
absolutely.
sort of helped me. And I was, again, this is another based on systems, I suppose, but it was like, how do you kind of create your encounters? Are you very much kind of, okay, with this type of environment, with this type of level, so therefore we're going here? Or are you literally like, well, that would be cool. Let's throw that in, that would be cool. Like, so how do you kind of
It's for sure a combo.
Mixture of both, yeah.
Yeah, it's like that. Like, there's an amazing concept, and you're just like when Josh here rolled up his character for our first season, School Days at Stone Shaper High, he said, I'm going to play a Southern Comfort chef who's going to high school. And I was like, in the back of my head, I went, Dungeons and Dragons Iron Chef competition. I had no idea what that meant at the time, but I knew that I had to create it because I was like, he is going to have his moment in the spotlight. It is going to be this. I now have the responsibility as the DM to design it because I had that thought and it had to come out on paper.
So Josh, DM Josh. I get really confusing.
I figure no, I'm Fizzlekins. It's fine.
Yeah, great.
We're good.
That's great. I
Josh
love
is
the double
him, it's
Josh.
fine.
Josh
We're
is
good.
We're
Yeah,
both
Josh, you
DM
got
Josh. What's going on?
DM Josh Ellison. So I know that
Okay.
you and I have spoken a lot about sort of encounter building, and you've kind of brought this down to a T in the way that you kind of work. So I wonder if you can kind of just talk about how you put encounters together.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, it's a mishmash of different things. So I'm a big fan of the Angry GM blog. I don't know if anyone else reads that. A very foul-mouthed but ingenious DM basically keeps a blog and writes all the kinds of topics that new and experienced DMs want to know about. And one of the big ones that he did that affected how I do encounter building is how to make combats not suck. A blog in 3 parts. And one of he made this beautiful metaphor to describe the relationship between like role play and mechanics in combat. He was like, you've got to make it swim like a motherfucking dolphin.
Yep.
Where basically the combat, the mechanics are the air that keeps the dolphin swimming. But the dolphin spends most of its time underwater. It only comes up for air when it absolutely has to. So that was kind of like the first thing. And then the big major thing recently was Joe introduced me to Sly Flourish. And
They're both really great creators. Yeah, both of them.
I haven't heard of that second one. I'm gonna check him out.
So I think Sly Flourish is Lazy Dungeon Master.
Yeah,
right?
he definitely is. Yeah.
Oh, same guy. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, and he has basically a great formula for getting like a ballpark figure on your challenge rating for an encounter, which is you go by either a third, like if you totted up all the levels in the party, so say like you've got 4 level 5s, you would have then 20 levels to play with, and then for a deadly encounter you divide that by 2, and you use that as your sort of CR budget, and then you obviously, depending on context, magic items, battlefield, all this other stuff, NPCs, you figure it out from there. But that gives you like a ballpark. So those are kind of like the 2 main things. And then the third one is a book that I just have to give a shout out to because it's amazing for making your monsters more unique, more unto themselves, like having an identity of their own, particularly in how they navigate combat. Because I suppose, in a sense, tactics are a language for a monster that doesn't otherwise get to speak to your party.
Yeah, man, the fight tells a story in its own way. Yes, yeah.
Exactly. And that book is called The Monsters Know What They're Doing. Battle Tactics for Dungeon Masters. And I think there's a sequel that's out now as well, but it's for player tactics. And yeah, it's a marvelous book, and the blog is great to follow online as well, because he's as new bestiaries come out, he's adding like blogs for each of those new beasts that weren't covered in the first book. So I would say those 3 resources are like the big thing for me for encounter design, specifically combat design, but also just encounter design generally. And then if I can just add, sorry, I know I'm waffling a lot.
Go for it.
If I can just add one other thing. I'm not sure who I got this from, actually. This might have been an Angry GM again. But when it comes to role-play like pure role-play encounters, what I used to do was I would design scenes that had a beginning, a middle, and an end. Of course, that doesn't interact very well with a party of 5 players who have independent thoughts and actions of their own. It breaks down very quickly. So what I started doing, and I'm pretty sure it was Angry GM that I got this from, correct me if I'm wrong, what I started doing instead was really designing like in-depth NPCs with objectives and fears and desires of their own. Because then it doesn't matter where the scene ends up. It's just a question of, here's my objective, here's your objective. Are they aligned? Yes, we can help each other. Are they unaligned? No. Okay, who's going to win?
Yep.
And winning isn't necessarily combat. It's conversation. It's cajoling.
It can be,
bribery,
overcoming the encounter, right? Overcoming the challenge, right? I just want to like pivot off the stuff you're saying. First of all, Sly Flourish and like the Angry Dungeon Master, I know, and they're both really great. Like Sly Flourish is Lazy Dungeon Master. I've helped like a lot of folks start DMing in the last 6 months. My post-show recaps crew, like I think we've got like 5 of our 8 full-time DMs like just picked it up since January, right? And I try to send them all like the Lazy Dungeon Master's Guide, because it's got such great techniques for abstracting information and empowering you to not feel like you need an 80-page Google document before you like open the table up, right? But I also want to really hype up Matt Colville, who I think he's such an incredible creator in the space, and we're like a bit of an age. He's a little out in front of me, but I've been doing this long enough that like the math is very intuitive to me. Like the metrics like are really, they're abstractions of like an imperfect system, and 5th edition is like balanced well if you're playing it by the book, which like I don't know anybody that really is, we kind of try whatever, right? But like ultimately I'm like big on a Monty Hall campaign. I come from like the 2nd edition era of like, I played a ranger for 10 years that like the ranger was like really nothing of himself, but these items that he accumulated became like what he was, what he could do in a very meaningful way, right? So I throw way too much shit like attunement out the window. I'm just like, yeah, take it. I give a lot of stuff to my players, which wildly imbalances everything already even worse, right? That I tend to like focus in on like, what's the group coming here? Who are they going to be? And Colville, gosh, I think it's probably in Kingdoms and Strongholds, or Strongholds and Followers, the book that he just recently is like about to release. Where he has the action-oriented monsters, and that's a thing I was doing before he gave it a name and like mechanized it in a clean way, where it's about the action economy fundamentally, like the combat balance, right? The rhythm of what's happening. It's so tough to put the big boss in front of them and have them kind of pinata the hell out of it, alpha striking. You got paladins smiting for 100 points of damage, right? The rangers are like critting everything, and so like legendary actions, mythic creatures, like you were talking about early, Joe, these are awesome tools in 5th edition. And Colville in particular has a ton of great content on YouTube for like new DMs to talk about like, the rules. I love the dolphin analogy. I'd read that from the Angry DM, but the rules are there for when you need them. Like the more often you can kind of keep yourself down there swimming without having to like grab at them and open the book and read it again. And wait a minute. But fundamentally, like the fight, the flow of the fight, the pacing, the movement, it's about the action economy, and it's about like keeping some momentum there, and I love to completely overmatch my players with encounters that they have no reasonable ability to get out of, because they probably will. But I also love to sometimes like lob them those softballs where they show up because 5th edition characters are action heroes, right? Like they're badass. As soon as you hit 3rd level, they're doing crazy stuff, and they want to be badass, right? Like when you get done with your like shitty day of work and like you got to mow the lawn and then whatever, the kids are nagging at you, the dog's barking, you got to go buy groceries, world's a pain in the ass, everything's on fire, it's a pandemic, like you show up to play D&D, you want to kick some ass, right? And like have a good time. And so like giving them those opportunities is important too. So I vacillate all over the place from like I want this to be challenging but like manageable to like I don't know, they'll figure it out, or maybe they'll run, or maybe some will die. To all right, let's watch them like carve through butter for a few hours, and like that's cool. And when you can mix all of that up into one session, like that's the juice to steal from a city of Misterm. Anyway,
something I did.
That's very brave.
Sorry, just very quickly. Something that I thought about this is like one of my favorite weapons in this is fear, like creating fear, creating tension.
Man, I got a good one.
Dread.
Like, and one of my favorite, I think me and Josh were talking about this. We had a vampire in one of our things, and there's a lich who's part of kind of the magic part of the cult, and essentially they got turned into vampires because he forced them into a room for 12 hours with food in front of them and waited until they ate something before, and exhausted them before he got to them. Huge 3-hour battle, 4-hour battle, and then just as they're about to kill it, the time suddenly stops, a portal opens behind it, and a lich comes out and kills the vampire, and then goes back into the portal again. And they're all like, what the fuck?
Fresh fuck.
And I was like,
was that?
Great, this lich is now my greatest weapon against these guys.
Yes.
I could put his face, I could put his face in a cloud, right? I could have a storm come over and hear his name whispered in it, and they will shit themselves. But now I have the problem of making sure that guy is strong enough to take their expectations when they actually get there, and that's our job.
So,
I think.
I mean, like a big idea for that one though. I mean, if they're going to be going to the Lich, you have to think about it. This Lich is a spellcaster. He's going to have his own hold. He's going to have his place prepped with glyphs of warding and symbol loaded 9th level spells in that shit because he's had years to do this. So
literally multiple lifetimes.
Yeah. So those symbols are loaded with 9th level spells. And they're in there ready. So going back to the action economy, it's like, yeah, you're going, oh yeah, this is one lich. Yeah, he has legendary actions. He gets, most 3 of those, and he has an action by himself. He's going to be a pinata against 5 people, 6 people. But then, they start walking in, boom, there goes a spell. I didn't see that. Well, yeah, you couldn't see that because you have to take magic on. Well, he concealed aura on that.
Yeah.
Bam.
This is my favorite stories of like
You
Tomb of Annihilation, the great idea. Yeah, sure, it's a beholder. It's also invisible and it's tortured. Off you pop. And it's like
it's insane. Can't be reasonable.
You always think about how they prep.
Yeah.
The 5th edition design is cool because it like divorces the monster stat blocks from the player stat blocks, right? And you guys all talked about 3.5. I love 3.5, but it's like really over designed, right? It's designed really well. It's awesome. It's like efficient. It's rational. It's logical. You can follow like the design to its conclusion and be like, well, of course that makes sense. But now we spent an hour figuring out how to grapple each other. So like, shit, we'll see you next week, And the problem is you need people who like are on the mechanism to like be able to like really push with it at pace. But 5th edition was like, yo, this whole idea that the players should understand like exactly how the monsters work and they should be married to the same system as the 12-player character classes, like throw that out the window, like the monsters are operating on their own basis, and empowering them with the ability, like, again, I'm this old grognard with the white beard. I've been doing this forever. So like, I like to go back to the days where like concentration like was not a thing. And yeah, the Lich shows up with stone skin and improved invisibility and contingencies for teleportation and like, yeah, when you start layering that in and putting symbols and creating environmental reasons and like, layer actions and all of this, these are tools that are built into 5e right there in the monster manual for us to break the rules, right? And like empower these encounters as we need, right? And I think that the real trick is like maintaining the authenticity and the trust is like, designing that stuff in front of the moment when you need it, like I try not to like fudge and pull the shit in at the last minute, and like I try to think it through, and like if they're fighting a lich, it knows what it's doing, so you better come correct. because otherwise it's going to get ugly, you know? Anyway.
Well, and Joe, I don't mean to hijack this,
Good.
but Rich, you are hitting on something that I find a fascinating point of conversation whenever I talk to DMs, which is the concept of Rule Zero. And for those who are uninitiated who might be in the chat, Rule Zero, I think, was written by Gary Gygax in one of the original D&D books. But it basically says, and you can find it inside the cover of the DM manual in 5th edition in a translated version, which is, this is a guidebook. This is a guidebook of rules to tell a story. You may, as the DM, change any and all of them at any point to tell your story. And it literally tells you right in there, divorce yourself from the idea that this is a game of pure rules, because that is 1000% not the intention. I was talking with my cousin about this, who gets really crunchy with it, and he was saying Critical Role fucks up rules all the time.
Oh yeah.
No one calls them on it because
that
just
might tell a different story.
people might call them on it, but what I'm saying is that the majority of fans aren't standing outside like the guy from The Simpsons going, in episode 35 of blah blah blah. Yeah, most people just want the story to be told, and they want it to be told well. And so I'm always fascinated on the idea of homebrew, of self-creation, of Rule Zero, because Rule Zero could be as little as and again, I hate to keep hyping my own campaign, but in episode 1 of School Days at Stone Shaper High, the bad guys come in to this gymnasium and they're trying to keep people from looking in, and so they use create mud instead of create water and just shoot mud out of their hands and cover the windows. And it was just such a small augment to a spell that I was like, I don't feel bad, and if one of my characters wanted to pick that up and they had the access to create water, it's fucking why not?
I think, there's such power to it, to that rule of cool, to being able to pivot on the moment, right? I guess for me as a DM, my big thing is I want the players to feel like they know the rules, that I'm not going to flip the script on them beforehand, right? But that's where the Rule Zero marries itself to Session Zero of hey, here's this campaign, we're throwing out this and this and this, and these are things you should know, and creating the environment for them to feel empowered to create mud when the moment comes, that they know they can ask you that, and you're let's do it, right. But man, it's a guideline.
Exactly. I mean, I also think that goes not just for us as DMs. I often, and a lot of the time, I will ask my players what the rule is, and that becomes the canon from that moment on. We had a big session and we had we tried a mechanic. It didn't work out. And it was a lot of people died. A lot of people died. And it was it was long-term characters as well. And it was very fickle deaths. Do you know what I mean? Because of the mechanics. We all decided the mechanics. We tried it out. It didn't work. So it was okay, cool.
Yep.
We need to work this out. So we looked at how do we retcon this in story and role play to see if we can, how do they survive? What limbs do they lose? What parts of their memory do they not have anymore? And it was we need to make sure that when we try something and it doesn't work, that we can all be accountable and then change that rule. And that's what it is from
for sure.
And I found that hugely gratifying. And it also means that guys can go, oh, hang on a minute. Well, we did this last time. Is that the same situation here? And we go, actually, I don't know if the context is the same here. Okay, but this is a different context. So how do we feel? And we would make canon rules. And I think it's
especially if your players are being creative.
Do you know what I mean? It's
if
players,
I am 1000% a DM who says, hold me to my rules, hold me to my world building. Because if I make up a rule on the fly, I think one of my favorite examples of this actually is in another popular D&D show, Dimension 20. They were in the forest of the Nightmare King. And he said, illusion magic in this forest works better than illusion magic outside the forest. And somebody died and they needed a diamond because the cleric needed to revivify somebody. And the bard goes, I'm going to illusion magic a diamond. and it will be real because you said illusion magic works. So if I roll a high enough performance check, this is a real diamond, right? And the DM was like, fuck me, I guess you're going to hold me to my world building. But yeah, I said that. So, and I'm the same way. It's like if I change or I tweak an obscure rule for the bosses or for the enemies, don't think that that's, something you can't play with as well.
Okay, well, I know that we're kind of getting through quite a lot of stuff. What I would really like to do, because we've got quite a few people in the chat, I actually would like to try to take some questions.
Heck yeah.
And see if
Welcome
anyone
in,
have
everybody.
any. Yeah.
How many people we got?
Players.
I see a bunch of my players from post-show recaps wandered in because they're pretty rad. But so yeah, you guys should ask questions of these wonderful people.
Yeah, please.
You get to talk to me all the time. These folks are really smart.
Oh, mate, I could just listen to you.
So
talk all the time.
while they're asking questions, Joe, I just want to point out that Rob said don't listen to anything we're saying, so you can't bring it to your game. But
mate, he killed Donkey Kong.
zombie eagles.
Mate,
He killed Donkey.
Rob.
He sent Donkey Kong to the 9th circle of hell
Mate, that's
to
death.
meet Lucifer.
That's death, man. Rob Thompson, I have a blood feud with you, my friend. I will have zombie eagles if I want them.
Joe,
on their chest.
Joe, don't worry. Donkey Kong's gonna have to climb his way out of the 9th circle of hell because now he's on a
yeah,
mission.
man, absolutely. Okay, so let's see. Have we got any questions sort of come up? So if you have any question on the chat for us, this could be a DM question, it could be a roleplay question, it could be about D&D, it could be about another system, it could be literally I'm about to start DMing, what's your kind of this time.
I feel like there's
our
probably a
favorite
lot of good like how to take care of your beard advice in this group right now too. So I mean, I'm just putting that out there for anybody who's curious.
You're very generous, Rich.
I got to get through the itchy phase. Every time I try to grow a beard, I need to find some good beard oil and just suck it up.
I didn't mean to like single you out. I love you.
No.
I really appreciate your beautiful face. I'm just saying, there's a lot of wisdom that I'm sure that's accumulated in this group of individuals here. So
Here we go. So how do you deal with a large power difference with the players in your game? And that's come through from, I'm just trying to see, is it Adhe?
his name is Adon. He's
Adon.
going to be playing with us tomorrow,
Oh,
and the witch is dead right here at 9 a.m.
Hell
Eastern,
yes.
2 p.m. UK. We're going to be.
Does
rolling
Adon
up for some
play in your other
familiars.
game?
Adon plays on the West Marches I run for post-show recaps. He's one of our players. Okay. He's a great player. He's like fell in love with D&D through the games back in the day. And this is a question because we have this West Marches game. We have characters that are 6th level and characters that join this week that are 1st level. So what do you do when I have a 6th level Warforged barbarian with levels in Druid who's taking half damage from everything, and then a 1st level bard and this 1st level wizard over here? And this poor little 1st level ranger, how do you balance that? What do you do? What do you guys do? Does that ever happen for you guys? It's just, I don't know.
I've never had it happen, but just off the top of my head, the two ideas that popped in that I have to like weigh is, on the one hand, are they just the apprentice of the higher level character, and now their life is tied to them? Right? Because the master doesn't want to let his apprentice die. And so by stick by me, I'll show you the ropes. Your higher level characters are kind of mentoring them and are responsible for keeping them alive. And I would give bonuses for that. Maybe the little guy has bonuses from being in the presence of his tutor, and the tutor will get bonuses if he can keep his little guy alive and actually raise him up. So that's one thing. And the other idea I thought of is you can also use artificial elevation through magic items or temporary abilities to bring them up to compete at that level, even though they haven't earned it yet. And then you can always scale back magic items by having either temporary effects or limited charges. So those are the two ideas that just popped into my head.
They're both good ones. I've done things like this for sure. Yep.
I think for me, I would do very similar to what Josh was saying earlier about knowing what these creatures are up to or know what they're doing. And the monsters know what they're doing. It would be like, cool. Okay, we usually use minions to sort of kind of look at the action economy, right? So actually there's a way in which you can make, you know, a CR1 or CR2 that would be a minion sort of creature to these other players feel like the biggest thing inside the room when they're the level 6s, level 7s, and level 8s, so they're fighting the big, you know, adult dragon on the side. And then they can have those moments of being able to help those big players, I would suppose. And just the way that you direct the fights to make them feel, okay, cool, we're playing against something where this is a larger system. Also, I think maybe splitting the party a little bit. So the first is going around, maybe they're doing something something major that needs to be achieved for the level 7s and 8s below them to finish this guy off. Like, they have to release the chains at the top to be able to allow that class to fall down on the dragon and hold it down, you know. So there's something that I would probably try and play with myself, I think, for that kind of situation.
I mean, that's a really good way to do it. And another background I have is I also LARP too. So
nice.
Yes, and this comes into play a lot in the LARP because you have people that have been playing for years. They're level 20, you know, and you have new players coming in. They're level, you know, 1 to 5, and they're like, how can you engage both? So generally, you know, at least where I play, you know, the plot and all encounters are written where there usually is, you know, the one big guy that if he wanted to could one-shot any of the lobies because, you know, he's that powerful because he's supposed to be a challenge for the big guys. And, you know, when the fight's going on, you know, it's easy to identify going, hey, you need to, you know, you little guys need to deal with these minions because they're just going to keep on bapping on the big guys if you don't, and distracting them or eating their defenses. And they need that to deal with the big guy. And then also the big person would be like, hey, let's keep the, you know, any AoEs that may go out over here away from stuff like that. So yeah, it's a matter of providing content for both where they interact together.
Yep.
Yep. Everyone, yep on that one.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very
around,
well said. It was thoroughly articulated, you know. Yep.
Yeah, I think. I mean, obviously, everything that's been said thus far, like, I fully endorse. Like, particularly magic items are a sort of like a quick pinch that I've used to sort of like rebalance those sort of things. But not even necessarily if there's a disparity in levels, but like just a disparity in player experience or players who know the system well. And like you tell them it's a level 4 party and one of them shows up with like 3 levels in sorcerer and 1 in paladin, or vice versa. Everyone else is playing a straight class, and you know. Another thing because again, I've not had a huge amount of experience with this, with like a power gap. But one thing that's always occurred to me is like that one player or those 2 players who are really, really powerful or overbalanced. What is it specifically that they're overbalanced at? Because it's a game of many pillars.
Yep.
And so like, okay, like, and the example that immediately springs to mind is a short campaign that Joe ran. It was based out of the Yawning Portal, I think. Like, we were running the Flaming Forge, I believe, or the Forge of Fury.
Yep.
And we had a proper min-maxer player show up. And he was like, it's 3 levels. And I was like, cool, I'm going to play a ranger. And then we had like a fighter, and we had a warlock. And then somebody showed up, 2 levels of sorcerer, 1 of paladin. Basically no backstory, and that's fine. Like, it's completely valid if you want to play it by the numbers and just be like the hardest hitting bastard at the table. Like, that's totally valid, as much as being really hardcore into role players. And but his character was really good at hitting stuff hard. But if that character had to negotiate, that character had to intimidate, if that character had to hide or steal something, if they had to find out information or recall information, then they needed the rest of the party. And so I think there's often, and it's understandable, like I imagine particularly if you're like me and you migrated to D&D from video games as opposed to the other way around, then you might come into it with this thing of like, how do I get the +3 longsword? And like, how do I make, and DMs, like, I know as a DM, I've come in with that attitude, like in games past, where it's been a largely combat focused game. But I think that would probably be my main solution, would be this thing of, and this might just be my naivety and my inexperience talking, but is there a character class that you can make like particularly
you're
in the
talking
lower
about
tiers
making
of
a
play
game?
that is good at absolutely everything.
I mean,
Like
I
as
mean,
a party unto
I
themselves.
think I'm
It's
going
fundamentally a team game. I just was going to say it's fundamentally like a team game, right? Yeah, and it creates a system where, like, you need the rest of the group to succeed. That's like inherently true, regardless of the levels, right? So you lazy dungeon masters know your party when you know that one character. Not only their like mechanical strengths, but like their idiosyncrasies, their personality. Oh, you're the 6th level barbarian. You got to charge in. Okay, go charge, and then we lock you in that room while everybody's out here dealing with the real problem or whatever, right?
All
Attack their
force.
weaknesses, exploit their vulnerabilities, play off of their personality, set them up to like set themselves up, all that stuff. I could say a lot here, but Joe, I'm sorry.
Give them
I just
60
wanna-
feet.
But yeah, I think we have other questions.
Yeah, I just want to make
Let's
sure we have a good question. So you talked about magic items there, so I thought this one might be a nice fun one for us to kind of chat about. Just what is your favorite overpowered magical item that you have around?
Can I just respond right now? The game that I run on Monday night is called Firelight Tales, Titans Heirs. The adventure, the Titans Heirs, was an adventure I wrote like 15 years ago for 3.5 or 3rd edition or whatever. And it's fundamentally just an adventure designed for me to give the Maul of the Titans to a bunch of player characters, because I spent freaking 20 years playing D&D looking at this stuff in the back of the Dungeon Master's Guide that is so friggin' cool, and you never get your hands on it, man. And here's this Maul of the Titans. You need the gloves of ogre strength. You need a girdle of giant strength. Then there's the Matic. Yeah, the Maul of the Titans is rad. I also love the Rod of Lordly Might. So last week on Monday, Kurt Clark, friend of yours here at Sabotage the DM, got his hands on both the Maul of the Titans and the Rod of Lordly Might, which are just these like nasty weapons from like back in the day. Some have been updated, some haven't. Love them. Love them. Love them. I'm done.
I think
that same reason is why I love my Dragon Crusade, because I literally did the same thing. Because okay, you guys are going in big, hard, and hot against big guys. Here, magic items, just these things you'll never see.
Num, 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 num,
Your
num,
magic
num,
item
num,
bay.
num, num.
Yeah.
Your magic item bay just
Yeah. One of my favorites, and it's the reason that it's my favorites is what you do when you break it. Is that me and Josh were talking about this. Staff of the Archmage, like the nuclear bomb option of like pure force power. Like I just love the idea of having one, not using any spells, being the last wizard available, the last player available, and just cracking that shit over your knee and just giving out whatever 60 D12 that it pumps out or something stupid. Like it's sort of like I love a big piece of damage. I love a big explosion. Like there are certain things, boxes and these wondrous items that I'm like, cool. Just give me something that fucking explodes and does mass damage to anything around, to everyone, including yourself.
Well, then I have a story for you. Anyways, first starting off, my favorite magic item, and is more powerful than its rating, is the immovable rod. It is way more powerful than an uncommon.
Thank you, Josh.
Yeah.
I was about to say it. Go for
You
it.
can do so much shit with that, especially if you get more than one.
Yeah.
Yes, dog. We'll go outside later.
What about you guys?
All right.
Yeah, carry on.
But
Josh, you go.
yeah, the explosion. So this is
Unless you're not ready, in which case I'll go. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
I mean, I think, of course, we've got to give honourable mention to the deck.
Yeah.
Like,
Deck of many things.
Yep.
The biggest mistake you'll ever make as a DM.
It's the
Absolutely.
best.
I'll just
My
introduce
players are
So
talking
good.
about it in the chat now. I'm like panicking, I'm like, no, please don't talk about the deck.
Yeah.
Don't talk about the deck.
yeah, Joe gave one of those to my sorcerer in the Pirates campaign. She hasn't worked out what it is yet.
Yep.
Uh,
I've also just given one to my
we're gonna
audience.
stop with that.
I've just given one to my audience for the stream as well. So if they get enough points, they can pull a deck and we'll see what happens.
Ooh,
They're
that's
so
a good
great.
idea.
They're so great,
and then I think I would say, I know what it is. It's do you remember the robe of scintillating colours
Yes.
from Team of
yes,
Annihilation?
yes.
So our bard used that to such magnificent effect, like repeatedly throughout that campaign. It just ended combat before they'd even started that road.
Mhm.
And then my final one, and this might be a little bit of a spoiler to my Frostmaiden players, a little bit, because it was introduced in that book, is the Scroll of Tarask Summoning.
Mhm.
Yeah.
fair.
That's here's the world ender button. Don't press it.
Definitely
And
pressing
they
that
gave
button.
Oh man. Well, so Josh already took my first one, but that's fine because I thought of like 5 more. So the first one, obviously the immovable rod. It's so good. There's so many cool things you can do with it. It's a creative character's just bountiful harvest of ideas, and I love watching. I love giving them to players because I just want to see what you're going to do with it.
Yep.
So that's just absolutely phenomenal. One of the most underrated items that was given to me by a DM, and I cannot wait. I have it planned in a future campaign to give to my characters. That's overpowered as shit. Is the severed eye of a beholder that is specifically the eye that casts a ray of anti-magic. Wow. It's basically a point, the highest level of dispel magic that you can point at anything.
Oh, yeah. Anti-magic is like nightmares fuel. Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. It's so overpowered. And like, we were given one that was like a beholder that was killed like 300 years ago. So like, it was like, pull it out of this pouch and it'll be gone in 10 minutes. And I understand the need for that because it is OP as hell, but it is just so cool.
I need to just throw a footnote with the immovable rods. It's like the portable hull too. I mean, that's like legendary hijinks right there. You know, you give them a portable hull and it's going to hit the fan real quick. Yeah, I love it. Yep.
But my favorite item to deal damage, and this is shout out to 2nd edition, is an unlimited wand of wall. Okay, that doesn't sound amazing, but let me tell you what it does.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
You get to summon a 3-foot high, 12-foot wide stone wall anywhere within a 60-foot radius of your character in a sphere, which means your dragon you drop the cloth on the dragon, it can't move. Wall 60 foot above it. Wall 60 foot above it. That dragon, as an ancient 2nd edition worm, which were made to be semi-unbeatable between burrowing, flying, and their breath weapon, semi-unbeatable. You can kill that zombie in like 5 turns. Because you're dropping a 3-foot stone wall from 60 feet up. The damage calculation of falling damage with that is ridiculous.
Okay, so I'm going to go back over to like roleplay questions. So one here is, have you ever stopped yourself from killing a player character out of guilt or being overly emotional connected to that player character?
Yep.
Yeah, I think I've definitely.
I've learned to go past
that.
I've learned to go past that and have a cold heart at these moments now. But
well, there are some times I'll be cold heart and going, "Hey, you're just gonna die. Deal with it." I've done lethal games. The Dragon Crusade, I killed 4 characters.
Yeah, for me, I think it's the death. For me, it's afterlife is where it's the beautiful story of the afterlife. That's where we can kind of go, cool. When you die, yeah, you get stamped on by a fucking T-Rex, and that is it. You're done. You know, but that story of where does that soul go afterwards? That's the cool stuff. Like,
there's a lot of juice there.
I had a character die, and this was Pathfinder, and the rest of the party had access to the city of doors. So they actually went in there, went into the afterlife, and go, "Hey, can we get his soul back, please?" And did a deal and got me back for a bit. So
that's cool.
There's plenty of content there. So.
Yeah, there's so many different ways to take a character death. I mean, there's the cold-hearted way of like they're gone and what kind of an effect does it have on the party, and take the party to their have the party write their eulogy, take them to the funeral, have their wake at the local tavern. Like that's an option. The crusade into hell in order to get their soul back, the search for the great mage that can reincarnate. There's 1,000 different ways that you can do player death. That's really amazing, but I would be a liar if I said that there wasn't an opportunity where a player could have died and I either gave them a second chance to not die or just had to fudge something to make it better.
Yeah.
Or like
no. I mean, I think that
like-
that's the right thing. It's like so hard to know, but yeah, I've definitely had those beats where like, and usually for me, it's when I feel like there's a misalignment of like an understanding, right? I'm explaining something about the terrain or the enemy or something that like there's a disconnect, right? Like, because fundamentally our job running the table, right? We're trying to get everybody on the same page. So we're all like perceiving the same situation the same way. What's happening? Like, how is it happening, right? And when I miss those beats, which is common, right? Like fundamentally, these games are a conversation that we're just having with each other, with our players, like publicly for an audience sometimes. But when there's like a misalignment there, that's when I have the worst like recoil of like, man, I don't want you to die on like a misunderstanding, you know? I'll gladly kill you when you know what you're doing, you know?
you don't want
especially
to
for
arbitrarily
replays.
die.
Yeah, sorry, Josh, say that again.
Like, because, well, it's just like the last thing you want is for death to be arbitrary, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
because some crucial piece of information didn't go through, because something wasn't heard, something was misinterpreted or just reinterpreted from a way. And so much of DMing is like filling the gap between yours and the player's interpretations. And like when it comes to player death, that's when it gets to like the ledge of like this interpretation now has permanent cost and consequence. And it's like when you're going to fight a lich, you go expecting to die.
Mhm.
But it's like if you die of cold damage on the way there because one of you didn't communicate they were bringing their winter clothing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
that
that's
sucks.
perfectly what I'm talking about. That's 100% it, Josh. Like for real, right? It's relevant. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of that I can't remember where I read this, but it's like this thing of like it's never the DM versus the players. It's always the DM and the players versus the DM to an
Well,
extent. And,
there was
and
this
the
great-
DM wants the players to win and to be glorious most of the time.
For sure. There's this great Gygax quote. I just happened to like see it again last week where he's like, a great dungeon master never needs to try to kill their players. He merely needs to provide them ample opportunity for them to kill themselves like 1,000
Yep,
times.
yep, yep, yep.
Provide them with like ample
Coming from a guy who
opportunities.
wrote Meat Grinders, but you know,
Yeah,
It's very
I
poetic.
completely agree with that. Like, there's the amount of times I've been in tears, like with characters dying, and I think all of my players know this. I remember
that's the mark of a great game.
exactly. I remember the first one with I think Josh, you were my first character that I ever killed, which
Oh,
was
boy.
Erdin, who was a ranger who turned into a druid, and what was brutal is that they died and nobody saw. During the battle, how they died, all that they were dead. So, and he just
And they died saving another character as
died
well.
saving another character who was also then down. So you had the two
Yeah.
characters next to each other, one of which failing saves and one of which succeeding in saves, and the rest of the party just dealing with the shit that's around them. And it was tragic.
I'm
It was
gonna cry
tragic.
right now. Holy shit!
It was absolutely tragic, but
I feel like you
again,
just described a Pixar movie.
But again, it was the story. Jesus, man, that name carried on. Erdin, the name of Erdin continued for a long time.
Awesome.
The same way,
I love that.
Like
right?
a character who dies should become like the lynch of everything going forward. And we were doing Tomb of Annihilation. I think one of our characters died, and it ended up like in the epilogue. 'Cause my friend does an epilogue of all the characters that we touched in the whole campaign and what they do, and like our general kind of what ends up happening 30, 40 years in the future. And like the ship that kind of freed the southern part of Troll was called Lachlan, the name of the character that died. And it was like it came through even 50 years later, you know. Lovely.
I
Carry on.
can I like take a tangent for a second? So like I'm playing in this West Marches game, right? And I kind of hyperbolically said at the beginning I'm a forever DM because it's a title we can all relate to a little bit, I'm sure, right? But part of this West Marches experience in the last 5 months at post show recaps, I've gotten to play, and I made a character, and I went out with the other players, and I was playing bold and reckless, play it like I stole it, right? I have a 2nd level wizard, I'm a blade singer, 3 winter wolves, I charge in. I charge, right? I got brand new armor. My armor class class is 22. They come at me, shield. My armor class is like, you know, I'm feeling like
11 is stupid and
yeah, I'm virtually impregnable, right? I'm indestructible, right? Boom. Winterwolf breathes. I like a series of things happen. I take maximum damage on the roll, death by massive damage immediately. No saving throws. I'm dead, you know? And there's all these players that are just learning D&D who are like floored. Like, oh my God. Like it goes
Like,
that
that's a thing
quick.
that can happen.
Like, you're in charge. You're supposed to know how to do this. You just died. And I'm like, yep. And like you were playing live in the session. We shut the camera. I shut the mic. I walked off. And it got really profoundly emotional for me, but for the rest of this community. And it turned into this outpouring where the other DMs ran like a bunch of coordinated sessions. I'm a second level character. So resurrecting them is like a big deal, you know, that nobody can do that. We had established there's no clerics in the town who could do it. But we ended up like bringing in half the people in this game, right? 30 something people like participating in different ways. Some of them went to find the cleric who could do it. Some of them went to like find the money to like pay for the thing to get done. And we came together for a ritual, a Matt Mercer style resurrection ritual, because we decided death should matter. Let's like take the Mercer rules and go through a whole thing. And so one of the dungeon masters operated as the cleric. 6 of the players came forward, each one like performing part of like this ritual to bring my character back, and each one of them having help, a bard giving them inspiration, a cleric casting guidance. And I'm telling you guys, I've been playing D&D for 32 years now. Like I have never experienced a moment like that. Like I get like choked up talking to you about it now because the level of like emotion that these people brought. They are not streamers. These people did not say they want to get on a camera and put this out there. Half of them are brand new players 5 months in, and they're on a conference call, voice call on Discord. We got 40 people in the room, you know, and they're like taking these powerful moments of performance, writing out these things. And we like released it as a podcast, and I'm telling you, like immediately one of the most like, forget about D&D. It was one of the most like profound moments of my life to participate in this like outpouring of love and like and energy and like the story that came out of it, you know. Death is like a big deal in D&D, and like the emotions that it can draw out of us as real people in the midst of a year that is unprecedented in how hard it has been on all of us. It was a lot. And so I'm sorry to like monopolize the time to like tell that, but really
Brother,
so cool.
not
I think-
apologize.
I think
like tabletop games are the shit.
Yep, and this is why I think we're going to stop right there on that sentiment. Love,
Yeah.
this is all about love, and it's all about creativity. That is what it's about. I would love to have the 5 of us again on a more regular basis to keep chatting. I'm sorry if there's some questions that we couldn't get to the chat.
Write them down. We'll do this
We'll
again.
do this
If
again.
we're picking this up
Dave.
again, then yeah, hang on to them.
Exactly. So we'll make sure we do this again. I think I truly feel like a fucking rebel today, sitting at a table with you guys today. And I want to say thank you to every single person that's on the chat and watching us tonight. Yeah, I think we're going to be happily finished there. So please see us another time. We'll organise another time to get us all together. I think if you are a DM, keep being a fucking rebel. And if you're a player, keep terrorising those rebels. And we'll see you guys.
Keep
give your
sabotaging
DM a
the
chance to
DM.
play.
Exactly. Sabotage those DMs. All right, guys. I'll see you later. Mwah.
Later, fellas.
Mwah.